Uber may be overcharging you for rides based off one really interesting factor. And here's that weird factor. How having credits in your account may be costing you. This is just one of many. I'm going to be talking about a lot of weird stuff in this video when it comes to Uber and their pricing because things don't make sense, right? I guess pun intended, right? Literally and figuratively. This person said they had Uber credit. The price for the ride was displayed net of this credit rather than the full price, just showing the Uber credit as a payment method later. The fare seemed higher than usual. It was much higher than Lyft. Their hypothesis, right, this is just their own words, was that Uber seemed to be picking a higher price because they had credits in their account. They might be willing to spend more money because of the real out-of-pocket money. Cost was much less, and those credits were trapped anyway. It's kind of similar how I know people talk about like girl math. There's like a viral trend where, and I feel like I'm the same way with this. If I have like $10 in cash on me, it doesn't count if I pay something with that cash because it doesn't touch my bank account. And I feel like this is a very similar thing. One person, Rita or Charles, said the same thing. They typically get a ride between the same locations, same time of day, and it's about to be $20 for Uber and a bit cheaper than Lyft. Then one day, they bought a bunch of Uber gift cards at Costco because there's a 20% discount to face value. So they're like, hey, buy a bunch in bulk because it's going to save me money in the long run, 20% discount. And here's a weird thing, kind of scrolling down here. After loading the credit in their account, stranger things happen. For the same ride I booked regularly, increased from $20 to $30. So Uber, once that credit was in their account, started charging them $10 more almost instantly. Then he checked Uber prices with someone else's phone who did not have the balance in their Uber account, and the Uber pricing was the same as it was before. It was the usual $20 for them. And I gotta say, there has been something really fishy going on with Uber, and not just dynamic pricing when it comes to surging. That's one thing. But I'm talking about Uber charging random amounts, kind of sometimes without reason, but this to me is another clear sign that I don't know why. This is my third or fourth video talking about this, that Uber for some reason seems to be kind of predatory and taking advantage of not just the drivers, but also the passengers. As they demonstrated, or as I explained in this article, that one, for some reason, adding in credit to your Uber account, Uber says, all right, they have Uber credit there. So we're going to charge more for the ride overall, because for most people, and this is true, like I just talked about with girl math, they say, okay, well, if I have credit in my account, I don't mind spending extra money for this ride because I only care about the money that's being taken out of my bank account, right? So let's say if a ride's typically $20, like they said, and you have Uber credit of $5, Uber might charge you maybe $23 or $25 because they say, hey, we're going to charge them more for that same ride because in their mind, they're not spending $25 for that ride. They're spending $20 because $20 is coming from their bank account, $5 is coming from Uber credit. And as this person demonstrated as well, which is even more crazy, when they went to order that ride, that's almost always $20, it was $30. And then this only happened because of the Uber credit in their account. Then they had a person with them saying, hey, can you just check how much this ride is on Uber? At the same time, same location, same ride and everything. Their ride was $20. The former person's ride was $30. And that person did not have Uber credit in their account, which pretty much shows Uber said, because you have Uber credit in your account, we're now going to charge you $30 for that ride as opposed to $20 when we're going to charge everybody else $20 who does not have Uber credit. This is what's really weird. And this is just one instance, like I briefly mentioned in the beginning of this video. There were two other instances for me that were kind of weird. I will say this. I typically don't think I've ever bought Uber credit. The only time I've gotten Uber credit was when, like, say, like something went wrong with a ride or an Uber Eats order and they kind of gave me like a refund, right? But there were two times that were very, very weird to me. And I've done videos about this. One time, which was, I don't know algorithmically how this even makes sense. But it was very weird. I remember I came back, I was flying, was at LAX and was leaving. And I remember I was going to go home. And at the time where I was living, it was roughly about an 8 to 10 minute drive from LAX or the Los Angeles airport to my home. And I remember the ride was like $50. And I was like, that's insane. It was a really high surge. I think I just wrong place, wrong time. Maybe also Uber knew that I had to get home. So that could be another factor. $50. And I was like, $50 to go like 8 to 10 minutes down the road. I think it's like a 1 to 2 mile drive. It's a little ridiculous, right? And then I remember one of my friends was hitting me up and he said, hey, I know you just got back from traveling. We're having a party tonight. Do you want to come over? Now my friend's place was about a 15 to 20 minute drive. Basically, I'm gonna say 20 minutes and also double the miles. So it was double the distance to make things more even. And I remember I was like, you know what? I don't know if I want to go out tonight. I thought we just was flying all day, but let me check to see, maybe just out of curiosity. My friend's place, which was double the distance of my place, was $44. And I remember thinking, this does not make any sense. Like, literally, how come I can spend $50 to go home, which is about, I think at the time was exactly an 8-minute drive and almost like 1.5, 2 miles. Or I can spend less money, $6 less, to go double the distance and double the time. Now, I will say this. I did end up going home because I actually went with Lyft. I was like, I don't know what Uber's doing. I went to check Lyft. Lyft was normal. If anything, Lyft was charging me, which makes sense. The amount that they should have been charging me. So I'm like, I'm just going to go with Lyft. I did end up going home because I was like, okay. Also, too, either way, I'm like, if I happen to get the cheaper ride, I'm still also going to have to spend money later on that night going back home. So I'm like, I'm just going to go home anyway. But that blew my mind. I'm like, okay, how come Uber's charging more money for a ride that's double the miles, double the price, right? Or double the miles, double the time. Third thing, when it comes to this weird pricing, and this one is kind of more similar on this lines. I feel like that example, when it comes to the airport situation, was more of this kind of a weird quirk, or I don't know. And that is when it comes to random pricing for the same people, similar to this, but in different situations. I remember I was at my friend's place, and I did a video about this. We were going to go out, and I remember being like, all right, we were going from kind of the Playa del Rey area to Hermosa Beach Pier, in case anyone wants to know, specifically in LA. And I remember I pulled it up. I'm like, all right, not bad. $25 to go from here to there. I mean, I think it was $18. It was 18. It was 18 to go from Playa del Rey to Hermosa Beach Pier. And I remember being like, all right, that's not that bad. And then she goes, Mark, what are you talking about? I'm like, what do you mean? What do you mean? I'm like, $18 isn't that bad. I think it's usually around 15 to 20, sometimes as high as 25, depending on the surges. And she goes, it's not 18, it's 28. And I'm like, what are you talking about? You must have entered in the wrong address. Maybe I did. Both turned off the apps. Load them up at the same time. Like, find a side-by-side phone situation. Went from her place, hit Hermosa Beach Pier. Both of them popped up. Mine was 18. Hers was 28. For the same ride, same time. I wasn't getting a discount. I didn't have Uber Cash. I might as well mention that. And we're both like, wait a minute. This is not making any sense, right? And I don't know what this is. I remember on that video, some people commented saying that this is a weird thing because I was at her place, that sometimes Uber will charge you more if they think you're going to and from your house, because it's almost like you kind of have to order that ride. So because you're maybe a bit more desperate, they're going to take advantage of that desperation, charge you more. I don't know, but it made no sense. So I ended up ordering it because I'm like, hey, I'm going to order it. And the weird thing is, if it was like $18 versus $19, it would still be weird, but it would be like, all right, that's $1. But $10, that's a lot of money. Like, that is a lot of money when you compare the fact that it's $18 versus $28. I mean, that is ridiculous. And this is another situation of that. And again, it is one of those things I think that's kind of difficult about dynamic pricing, that when we talk about surges and stuff like that, surges, I hate to say it, I kind of get it, because what Uber and Lyft does when it comes to surging is they're saying, okay, we're going to charge more for the passengers. And the reason why is we can pay the drivers more. Because if there's, like, say, a lot of people on a Friday night going out, very classic example, to make more money driving for Uber and Lyft, we're going to raise rates for passengers so we can pay the drivers more. So it encourages more drivers to get on the road, because we need more drivers on the road right now because there's so much demand. Love it or hate it, I kind of get that logic, right? So the dynamic pricing related to surging makes some logical sense to me, right? With this, though, this doesn't. This, to me, is like kind of another example where I think Uber seems to be doing so much fluctuating testing to see what people are willing to do and what the almost psychological threshold, or the J&D, the just noticeable difference, where some people might say, hey, wait a minute, why is Uber charging me more for the same ride because I have Uber credit? Or they're charging me more for the same ride when it comes to my friend. Or they're charging me more for a ride when if I took a ride that's double the distance and double the time, it's actually going to be cheaper. And so what I think this tells me with my situations, with this article, with other people that have commented on this channel, it does appear to be that Uber, although they talk about dynamic pricing when it comes to surging, is constantly doing an aggressive amount of market testing to see what people are willing to put up with. And it does kind of stink. This is one thing about dynamic pricing that is really, really annoying, because when I think people think about Uber and Lyft prices being different, we're so used to it. It is very, very, I think, you don't even think about it. It's very rare to even think about it, that when you get an Uber or Lyft, it's kind of commonplace now that you're like, all right, I know that I have no idea how much money I'm going to spend. It's kind of like a roll of the dice. You're almost kind of gambling, right? And I feel like for other things, it's not like that. If I go to, like, say, the store to buy a gallon of milk, it's almost always going to be X amount of dollars. And I'm used to that every single time. It might go up a little bit because of inflation. And think about it. When milk goes from, like, say, I don't know, like, say, like, $3 a gallon to, actually, $3.50, a lot of people are like, wait a minute, it's 50 cents more, WTF. People lose their minds because they're expecting one price. But when it comes to Uber and Lyft and ride sharing, I think it's the only thing where people 100% expect the price to be super fluctuating and not even complain about it. You just say, oh man, it's $30 when it's usually $22. Well, I got to get the Uber. I got to get the Lyft. I'm going to do it. And of course, there are some things that have gotten better. I will say this is more on the Uber side because I feel like Lyft, typically I find the price fluctuations aren't as bad with Lyft as with Uber. I think Uber's worse, at least in my opinion. I also find here in LA, and I know this is different from place to place, Lyft is typically cheaper. In addition to this, Lyft now just announced Price Lock. I've done a couple videos about it where basically you can spend $3 a month for the same ride to and from the same place and around the same time within an hour window, and you don't have to worry about getting an extreme amount of surge pricing, right? I think that's a great idea. So I feel like Lyft doesn't usually have this issue as much compared to Uber. I think Uber's way worse at this. But again, this is another example though, which is kind of unfortunate with all the videos I've done about like Uber taking over a lot of things when it comes to Uber Charter, Uber Eats. I mean, Uber's taking over a lot of different industries. And I've said this before, Uber's kind of now an on-demand service app. I don't look at Uber as now a ride-sharing app. I look at it as an on-demand service app. I can rent a car through Uber. I can rent a parking spot. I can rent a party bus. Like I said, with Uber Charter, Uber Explore now, I can get reservations at restaurants or get concert tickets. So now to me, it's more of like an on-demand service app. And I've talked so much before in so many videos how Uber's, as well as it's getting bigger, treating their drivers worse. But in addition, I hate to say it, it almost seems like it's the same thing with the passengers. It's saying, hey, if we can find a way, with whether it's Uber credit or weird distances and times, or just randomly charging people more or less, we're going to keep doing as much market testing as we can because people are used to this dynamic pricing. So we can take advantage of them being used to it by maybe charging one person a lot of money, another person a little bit of money, and kind of do more testing to figure out, okay, what do people actually want to spend? What's the average person willing to spend on this ride? And let's push the limits to see in every way we can how much we can actually charge people for rides. And I get it's a business thing, but it is incredibly annoying, especially with this, that it's like, okay, if you have Uber credit, now you're going to be spending more money per ride because Uber's going to try to take advantage of you. Just not it.